If you watch the internet closely, you'll notice something strange. There's a war happening online, but there's one generation nobody's talking about. That's Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. To understand Gen X, you have to understand where their psychology was formed. It was in an empty house at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Millions of kids lived like this. They were called latchkey kids. Help is optional. Comfort is not guaranteed. You're on your own. You make your own snack. You do your homework alone. If you fall and scrape your knee, you rinse it off and keep moving. Psychologists call this benign neglect. And that absence wires the brain in a particular way. It creates the belief that needing help is a weakness, and asking for attention is annoying. The safest thing to do is take care of yourself and stay quiet. This is where Gen X's famous independence comes from, but it's also where their loneliness begins. Because the latchkey kid didn't stop needing love. They just stopped expecting it. Here's the thing people get wrong about Gen X. They think Gen X is emotionally cold, but that's not true. Gen X feels everything. They learned early that feelings are inconvenient. If you cried, you were told to toughen up. So Gen X developed a coping mechanism that looks like maturity, but is actually just compression. They learned to feel privately and function publicly. This is why a Gen Xer will never say, "I'm overwhelmed." They'll say, "I'm fine." They won't say, "I'm scared." They'll say, "Whatever happens, happens." And when they love you, they won't write you poetry. They'll fix your car, because vulnerability feels dangerous, but action feels safe. And the sarcasm? That's not cruelty. That's how they share pain without admitting it hurts. Gen X didn't grow up learning to talk about their feelings. They grew up learning to function through their feelings. So yes, they can be emotionally mature, but they can also be emotionally unavailable. The trait that made Gen X strong is the same trait that made them lonely. Your brain learns to scan for problems, solve them fast, and not make noise doing it. Hyperindependence is a superpower, but if you never learn to be held, it becomes a private kind of prison. Because Gen X didn't grow up in an era of trust. Gen X became the first generation raised on non-stop advertising. They developed what you might call a BS detector. Here's where Gen X has a rare advantage. They were raised in two different worlds. Gen X didn't just witness it, they adapted to it. Two realities, two speeds, one nervous system. On one side, aging boomer parents. On the other side, their kids. This is the generation that entered adulthood right when pensions started disappearing. Many of them are still carrying debt, mortgages, and the fear that they'll never catch up. Because the latchkey kids who learned to ask for nothing became the adults everyone asks everything from. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to choose yourself. Sometimes the people who never ask to be seen are the ones who need it most.